Redistricting Committee. Ty Masterson, who is the vice chair, is unable to attend, and I'll let Representative Croft introduce his committee.
Thanks, Senator. I'm Representative Chris Croft. I'm the chairman of the House Committee on Redistricting, and to my right is the vice chair, Representative Brad Ralph, and to his right is the ranking member, Representative Tom Burrows. And then I'd also like to highlight that we have with us today the House Minority Leader, Representative Tom Sawyer. Thank you, sir.
In addition, I would like to give Senator Sykes the floor to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first want to say thank you to Fort Hays for having us and for hosting. Thank you to everyone being out here and joining us. This is a very important process that we're a part of, and I hope this is only the beginning of the conversation that you're having with us. We need your help in developing districts that lead to healthier connections to residents, stronger representation, and better public policy for Kansas. So at the end of the session, my staff has contact information, but this is only the beginning of a process. So we hope that you will engage with us so that we have fair and legal maps. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And thank you to those in the audience and committee members, both here and online, for participating in the process. This listening tour is just one stop in the state's redistricting process with a goal of exceptional transparency and public access. What you have to say is very important to all of us. We are looking forward to becoming more familiar with your communities and hearing what you have to say on things to consider as we are drawing lines on how to improve the process for the benefit of all involved. We had an online sign-up sheet, and we had a sign-up sheet here at this meeting. If you did not get a chance, you will get a chance to sign up so that you can speak in a few minutes. If I in another language, it would ensure the speaker's thoughts are more accurately portrayed. We encourage the speaker to use that language. We will have comments transcribed and translated following today's meeting and provided to the committee members, the legislative body, and the public. We are also using closed caption here in the room and online. This time around, the redistricting is a little more challenging with the delay of the U.S. Census data, but it provides us an opportunity to listen to the public and become more familiar with your communities. Consider when drawing boundary lines and with process. It was announced this Thursday, complete data set being released on or about this listening tour, just one step and make a microphone over to Jordan, Research Department, who will provide an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Jordan Milholland with the Kansas Legislative Research Department. I'm a senior analyst there, and I'm our lead facilitator on the redistricting team. So tonight I'll be going over an overview of the redistricting process and the census process. To start off with the census, some part of the census is constantly happening. Redistricting is part of this cycle. Federal law requires states have the opportunity to participate in census preparations. States are required to participate to get census data for certain areas of the state. As part of the federal census redistricting data program, it provides states the opportunity to specify small geographic areas and to receive population totals for the purpose of redistricting. States must participate to receive population data for precincts within the state. It requires states to participate through the nonpartisan entity, and in Kansas, it's through our department, the Kansas Legislative Research Department. We've been working with the census during this 10-year cycle, and we'd worked with them in previous cycles as well. This program is broken into 5 phases, and the program begins in the year ending in 5 and concludes in the year ending in 5. So as I noted, with this current cycle, we've been working with the census since 2015. Next, I'll share a listing of the phases of the program. Phase 1 is the Block Boundary Suggestion Project. Phase 2 is the Voting District Project. And as part of that project, local cities and counties submitted updates to their precincts to be entered in for this next cycle. And then phase 3 is the delivery of census data, and that's currently where we're at. We are waiting that census data. As mentioned previously, we are expecting legacy format files on August 12th this week. Those legacy format files are they are an older sort of file type, and they require a little bit more manipulation to get to the data, so it takes a little bit of processing time to get to that data. But then with the other files that will be released by September 30th, those are a little bit more user-friendly and easier to get to, but it should be the same information in both. Phase 4 is confirmation of congressional and legislative district boundaries. This is after the redistricting process. And then phase 5 is feedback from the census. My next slide is about 2020 apportionment. So earlier this year, we received information from the Census Bureau. The information they provided us was the state population. That was the only number that we were provided. So that total population that will be used for the 2020 redistricting cycle is 2,937,880, and that's a net gain of 84,762 persons. And just a note, Kansas did not gain or lose a congressional seat as part of the apportionment. Next, I'd like to speak about the adjustment. From 1988 to 2019, the Kansas Constitution and the statutes required an adjustment for military personnel and college students. In 2019, the legislature passed a Senate concurrent resolution to remove that adjustment, and then that was later placed on the November 2019 ballot, and that was approved by voters. So that removed the requirement for adjustment for students and military members. Next, I'd like to highlight the upcoming process for the 2022 session. So I wanted to let you all know that this is a legislative process to begin with. The legislature proposes, votes on, and approves maps, and that's congressional, Kansas House, Kansas Senate, and Kansas Board of Education districts. And that takes the form of a bill. So any of these maps that are drawn, that become legislation, those will go through the committee process. They'll have hearings. Folks will be able to come in and testify on those bills, and they could be subject to amendment as well. After that legislative process, it's sent to the governor, who either signs, vetoes, or allows the bill to become law without signature. And then the Kansas Supreme Court also has a role in the process. They must review and approve the state maps. And next, I'd like to provide a little bit more detail on the process after it's passed by the legislature. So redistricting bills are published in the Kansas Register immediately upon passage. The Attorney General then must petition the Supreme Court to determine validity, and the court has 30 days from the filing of that petition to enter judgment. If the maps are valid, the process is complete till the next cycle. If the court says that the maps are invalid, then they must be redrawn by the legislature. And then there's several steps after that that must occur if that's the case. And this process repeats until the court determines the maps is or are valid. Finally, I'd just like to highlight the KLRD resources that are available for everyone. On our website currently, we have reports for the 2012 plan, so you can kind of see examples of the different types of reports that are available. And that's available to our website, ks.gov. And then we have a redistricting page you can access from that website. And just to note, similar reports to the ones that are on there are run for each of the proposed plans that are subject to a technical review. So during this upcoming cycle, plans that go through the technical review will have all of these reports listed here as part of that process. And my last slide, we've got contact information for KLRD. So as I highlighted, we have a website that you can visit. If you have questions, please email redistricting@klrd.ks.gov. And then I've also have our staff listings here as well, if you'd like to reach out to any of us individually. Mr. Chairman, I believe that concludes my presentation.
You hear me? Mic on. That's not the problem. Okay, now can you hear me better? Thank you, Jordan. Before we go any further, the closed captioning was not functioning early on in his presentation. Would you be so kind as to go over the first two slides again, Jordan?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
I'll ask for our staff to cue those slides back up, and then I'll go ahead and begin.
Very good. Just a second. Thank you, Jordan. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To cover the census process, so some part of the census is constantly happening, and the redistricting process is part of the cycle. And federal law requires states have the opportunity to participate in this preparation work. And states like Kansas are required to participate to get certain data. And then as part of the redistricting data program, it lets states specify certain small geographic areas, which allows the state to get population for those smaller areas. And the program is broken into 5 phases, which is participate in through a nonpartisan entity. And in Kansas, as I mentioned previously, that's through the Kansas Legislative Research Department. So we've been working with the census for the past several years with this current cycle, as we did in previous cycles as well. And then the final slide I'd like to discuss after the phases of the program, just wanted to go over those apportionment numbers again. So earlier this year, the census released our state total population that was used for the apportionment process to determine the congressional seats. They determined that Kansas's total population that will be used for this current cycle is 2,937,880, and that's a gain of 84,762 persons. And as I noted, Kansas did not gain or lose a seat.
Thank you, Jordan, for rehashing that. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We have a number of presenters signed up. We're going to give 7 minutes per speaker. Some of you have previously signed up and sent in more lengthy public comment as of yesterday. Those documents are in the inboxes for each of the committee members and are posted online in the legislative webpage for the redistricting committees. If anyone wants to provide public comment later, please send comments to redistricting@klrd.ks.gov. There is no cutoff date for the public to send in their comments. The legislative website does provide instructions for providing your comments, and we ask that you follow those instructions. We have now dispensed of the administrative and introductory interviews, and at this time I will make a point that we're not going to allow legislators to speak because they will have ample opportunity in committees as we go forth over the next legislative session. Remember, we are limited to 7 minutes per person. The vice chair will maintain a timer and will indicate with a card their time remaining. The vice chair start with 2 minutes left, 30 seconds. This will give an opportunity to wrap up your thoughts on scheduling. It will necessitate a hard stop. We will not make that happen. So our first speaker is Janice Stice. League of Women Voters of Great Bend. Welcome to the hearing.
Okay. Okay. My name is Janice Stice, and I'm here today as a member of the League of Women Voters of Great Bend. Okay, my name is Janice Stice,
There you go.
and I'm here today as a member of the League of Women Voters of Great Bend. Thank you for providing an opportunity for our community to speak to you this evening on a matter of great importance to all Kansans. I recognize the limited time, so I'll summarize my written testimony. The League is a nonpartisan organization that supports citizen involvement in public policy at all levels of government and has been actively involved in advocating for creation of fair districts in Kansas for many decades. We would like to point out two practices involving the redistricting database that are troublesome from our nonpartisan perspective and in terms of fairness. First, we urge the committees to reject the proposed
Check.
First, we urge the committees to reject the proposed redistricting reject the proposed, is this going to work? Is this, okay. Redistricting guideline addressing contests between incumbents. The guideline appears to protect incumbents, which may lead to unfairness in future elections. Similarly, the committee should see to it that legislators' home addresses are not included in the redistricting database. Second, election results and/or voter registration information should not be included in the redistricting database. The only reason such data should be available to map makers is to allow them to pick and choose safe areas for inclusion in new districts. The League has long held that practices such as these stand in the way of creating fair districts. Finally, I must comment on arrangements for this listening tour. Hearings are important both for legislators who must make decisions and for the public whose voices may be either stifled or amplified by those decisions. The League appreciates the committee's willingness to devote time to listening across the state, but is troubled by the compressed schedule and the very short notice prior to the start of this tour. This situation has made it difficult for ordinary Kansans to prepare and present pertinent information that will help you in your deliberations. The way these hearings have been scheduled is not really a listening tour. Rather, it is only a means of paying lip service and gives the impression you don't really want to hear what your constituents think. Also, no one, including yourselves, has had an opportunity to see detailed census results and identify what changes are required to maintain equality of population in our districts. We ask that you follow up this listening tour with additional well-publicized and widely accessible opportunities for Kansans to participate in this process after the census data are available and prior to the start of the 2022 session. Without detailed 2020 census data, we cannot make suggestions about the composition of fair districts at this time. Additionally, We ask that you please give 2 weeks advance notice of these additional hearings and allow your constituents opportunities to submit virtual testimony. I thank you for your time and attention this evening.
Welcome. Thank you. Welcome to Hayes. My name is Larry Dreiling. I have lived in Hayes on and off for 45 years. I was a news reporter here in Hayes for much of that time, but I worked for a magazine in which I covered national and global politics and their ties to Kansas agriculture, keeping my rural roots. Despite what we old timers were all taught in Schoolhouse Rock about how bills become law, it doesn't take a genius now to understand what this committee's true mission is about. Creating a reapportionment and redistricting law, the ability of the minority party to be heard in our state legislature, and dividing a current congressional district to make the state a single party state. Okay, I've said it. Republicans win, you get the spoils. Good for you and you and you and a few other folks. But is it good, in the words of a Washington, D.C. based voice announcer, is it good for Kansas? Is it good if there's no place for debate? Is it good that power be held with a few rather than the many? Sharice David's about as moderate a representative as they come. Scares you that much, Republicans? Scares you that much? Important questions, but do you care? No. You're going to do what you're going to do. I've been covering you arrogant guys, Republican and Democrats alike, for 40 years. I even tried to take one of you off this panel in the last election. So since you won't listen to me and you can really give a damn about what me or anybody else in this room thinks, I'm hoping some media here tonight who will get an independent judiciary. We who do the working and paying and need the folks in the courts to protect us from this arrogance. Because once you finish your job, we're going to have to start ours petitioning the court to have some of the dumbest ideas that I know are going to be coming around here, as they have for decades. And we all know that they end up in the courts. So let me offer you this very simple idea. Get it right the first time. Get it right the first time. I know you all are just looking here and not looking at me. You can take your notes and play with your machines and stuff like that, but listen up a little bit. Let David's have her district. You can even give Rick over here a bigger district out here and let everyone else say they are. You're in there to make it easy for even the elderly Republican folks in the big 5 counties to find their precinct. It's real simple to do the thing, the right thing. It is the simplest thing in the whole wide world to do the right. You can save the courts, you can save the court time, you can save yourselves in the state some money, and you can do all of ourselves some aggravation. And who knows, and I'm sad that Senate President Masterson isn't here. He might even gain some friends out of this exercise. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Dreiling. Are there any other conferees that would like to come forward and say a few words? Yes, please come forward. Give us your name and where you're from.
My name is Mark Shockwich. I come from Plainville, Kansas. Initially, I was not going to address the committee here today. I felt that the prior 2 speakers were going to be enough for my opinions, but I feel something's left out. And so this is something that I've hastily prepared, and I hope that you all will pay attention to because it implicates the status of the health of our government and state level. not to mention the national level. Here, I am struck by the Senator Wilborn's defining this meeting as a listening tour. The word listening is a verb that can be either active or passive. As in actively hearing speech and internalizing the logic and emotional content that speech presents or represents, or allowing speech to passively go through one ear and out the other. This distinction is important because it determines who can speak and whether or not their speech counts as evidence in making a decision. As elected representatives, you should all be actively listening if you're to operate in good faith as part of your positions. Here, good faith would be following traditional timelines and procedures under normal circumstances, making data available to citizens prior to this tour. Now, understandably, either due to COVID or because of the mess that was this last census federal level, and I think that's fair levels. And anyway, I think we can say, all right, let's set this data aside for just a moment in this listening tour because we don't have it. If that's true, then without data, what's the purpose of this listening tour and what input, what evidence do you want to acquire here? Without data, we have no common knowledge from which to figure which constituents would be impacted by the redistricting process and how. And without that, then what are you as representatives listening for? Question is what evidence do you want from us? Given the time frame in which this listening tour was organized, the way it was distributed, it seems like at least one could make the argument that those who could attend would be limited. Now, even if that's not the case, and sure there are arguments that could not be the case, that might not be the case, it seems to suggest that this listening tour has no common basis from which all citizens could gather to debate because we don't have the foundational knowledge for the process to create the new districts, in which case no debate can be had. So that calls into question whether or not this listening tour is active or passive. I would argue that the fact that we have no common available data that this listening tour is in fact passive. If that's the case, it calls into question the meaning of the word representation, i.e. representative, i.e. you all as elected people elected to represent the interests of your locale, but also representation as a verb, as in representing. And that means you are representing something that is not necessarily reflective of your constituents or of the state in its entirety. It is representative only of a few or of a minority, in which case, I think that suggests that the state of our democracy in this state is not very healthy. And if that's the case, we need to be looking both towards ourselves, but also ourselves as a community to whether or not we have a common basis and a common understanding of what listening is as an active activity, as a community. In which case, we should be thinking about this process and we should be rethinking about what counts as evidence and who can present that evidence and how it should be listened to. And if we don't have the ability to listen in the first place, we're not very healthy as a state community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shadwick. Are there any other? We have one more. Please step forward. Please state your name, please, and where you're from.
My name is Rob Fillion. I just want to say, unlike the other speakers, that I wish to thank you all for taking the time out of your lives for coming and doing this listening tour. I think you guys are doing a great service to your constituents across the entire state. So I want to say thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fillion. Are there any other conferees? Seeing none, I want to make note of two written testimony only. Robert Geis, a private citizen, has submitted written testimony. John Bird, a private citizen, has also submitted written testimony. Seeing no other hands, seeing no other conferees, we want to thank you for your input today, helping the legislature and these committees achieve unprecedented transparency and public access. This was the third stop in the 14-stop listening tour. The ones that are coming up, the ones we've had have been Manhattan, Salina, Hayes, Colby, Garden City, Dodge City, Hutchinson, Wichita, Chanute, Pittsburgh, Overland Park, Kansas City, Leavenworth, and Lawrence. This tour and this event is not the only time for input. As mentioned earlier, online submission of comments is welcome, and we will have formal hearings and testimony when we return to the session. We are working through what we'll do officially about the tour and before the next session begins in January. Thank you again. Thank you, Fort Hays State University. Thank you, Hays America, for being here.